We had a lot of good conversations we could have on the camera. It's all good. That's all good though. All right, ladies and gentlemen, for people who are going to tune in, I am back again after another podcast we just did. We did a great debate show, a great topic show. I don't know who all is going to join in this, but today we're going to do a little brief interview with a guy you all may know who's familiar, and we're going to promote for a bigger episode next week on the No Name Wrestling podcast that we do. Where we'll have more people who ask more questions and can engage more. But Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Anderson, some people you may know him, Mr. Anderson in TNA, Mr. Kennedy in WWE, a guy who I've been chatting with for a while now about doing something like this. So I appreciate you taking out the time and coming on here and chatting and doing something like this.
Yeah, man.
One of the guys who actually,
I want to say, like, I love your content, and I actually feel like you're opinionated, but like you're not a dick about your opinions, and I appreciate that, because at the end of the day, like, right, you're a wrestling fan. Everybody's entitled to their opinions, but like at the end of the day, I'm a wrestler. Like, these are human beings behind the characters that you see on TV, and
yeah, some people I think forget that stuff. I am a guy who, I could never do what you guys are doing. I have a very low pain tolerance, and I stub my toe, and I think I'm gonna die. You know what I mean? What you guys do, I knew that from a young age. My goal is to get into the wrestling industry, but more of like a creative side. Like I knew from a young age, I never had desires to be an actual wrestler. Like I mean, it would be cool to be in front of the camera and maybe be a character or something, but to take bumps week after week, like I studied a lot of that stuff when I was a kid, and the schedules and people's lives, like what it takes to sacrifice, divorces, relationship with your kids, being on the road all the time, like mentally, like I don't want to be on the road 300 days a year. Like mentally, I don't how people do it. Yeah, we talked about Cena briefly off the air, but like how he did it for years consistently at the top. I don't understand. Like how mentally strong are you for that?
I remember speaking to that my first year in WWE, Cena famously, like, behind the scenes, had made it home exactly one day in an entire calendar year. He literally said he would just go like one day. He said he would go to Target and just buy packs of underwear and socks and just wear them and toss them.
One day.
One day.
One day.
He was on the road out of 365 days. He was gone 364.
I don't think people can fathom that. I don't know about you.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine that one day? What that was like? Like, I'm sure he blinked and got to jump back on a plane and head out.
How do you not? How do you think you would have put up that mentally? Would you have been depressed, or would you have lost your mind? Like,
no. At that point, like, I think anybody would do it. I really do. Or not anybody, but most of the boys, most of the people that are in the business would absolutely, like, I'm getting sorry, my cats.
You're good.
Yeah, he's very affectionate right now. He wants attention, but I don't think it's something that's like unique to John. I think it's great that he did it, but I think everybody would do it.
Do you think, in your time in wrestling, because John Cena is my all-time favorite wrestler. He was like my childhood hero, like one of my childhood heroes. There's two people I wanted to be like when I was a kid. One of them was Kobe Bryant, and the other was John Cena. And growing up in my time, Cena was let's go Cena sucks, like the controversial guy, in that spot. And being a kid in that era, of course, he was like Superman to me, you know what I mean? Like in that time. But just based off your time in wrestling, is he, I don't want to say the hardest guy you've ever seen work, but is he like, when you look at his work ethic, is like, when you really look back and think about it now, are you like, how insane do you have to be to really like dedicate yourself to that craft?
He absolutely was the hardest working guy in the locker room. And I've witnessed trips where we were overseas. We were on a bus for like 5 hours after a show, or guys would go to the hotel bar and basically hang out, socialize with each other for a couple hours. 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, go to the hotel room. He would be in the gym at like 5 or 6 in the morning. No matter what, if he got 8 hours of sleep if he was able to get 8 hours of sleep the night before, or if he was able to get 2 hours of sleep or 30 minutes of sleep. That's all he functioned on. And he was going, man.
Man,
Hard
that's
truck.
the time, man. And you go back and look at that locker room too, man. We're talking ruthless aggression era. I'm a ruthless aggression era guy. Attitude era was great, but I was a ruthless aggression era kid for me. And
Mhm.
I've gone back and rewatched it so many times, and when I look at how stacked the locker room was with the talent that people had, I mean, you had Batista and you had Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Cena, Jeff Hardy, CM Punk was coming up at that time too. Bobby Lashley, who was a freak, and I was like, my God, first time I saw that guy, I'm like, good Lord, like, the
Yep.
locker room was so incredibly stacked. How competitive was it back then for you? Because you were also another guy who was upcoming at that time, like somebody that they were building in that, for at least something.
I never felt like it was competitive. Like, I felt like it was like, for the most part, everybody just wanted to help each other out.
Mm.
Especially when I first started on SmackDown, it was all those guys, like you said, Batista, Booker T, Finley, JBL, um, Bobby Lashley, Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, just huge name after huge name, Undertaker, King, and everybody was like throwing ladders down and like putting a hand out. Hey, try this next time you go out there. They would watch every match. Those guys, Undertaker would sit and watch every single match on the card.
That's great to hear because I mean I've heard stories about them tell stories about the Attitude Era, how it was competitive, like cutthroat, like everybody was fighting for a spot, everybody is. So I'm glad to hear that was more flexible, more of like, hey, let's help people and because I mean that's really what it's all about. Wrestling has always been a weird balance because it's about making yourself look good, but you also have to make others look good in the same aspect. So it's like you have to really know the balance of. We've heard stories about people abusing their powers. We've heard stories maybe people didn't abuse the powers that they should have, because they were too unselfish. So it's really a mix of
Yeah.
like, how do I make my character stand out where I'm a vocal point of the show, but also make other stars in the process because I can't be the only one to do it by myself.
And that was just it. Like, well, if 2 or 3 people on the show are the main attraction, or the really good workers, then like the whole show suffers. Whereas at least when I was on SmackDown, I think I would say Raw was a little more, I don't know, cutthroat, but it was definitely more competitive in that sense. But yeah, like it's better if everybody on the show is good.
So is there really a
And
difference between Raw and SmackDown, like being on the show?
there was at the time, there was, and it was competitive in the sense that like we wanted to do a better show than Raw, and Raw wanted to put on a better show than we did, and it was treated kind of like, I don't think it was ever on anywhere near the level of the competitive nature between WCW and WWF at the time, but
No, no,
it
yeah,
was
yeah.
like a little version of that.
Did you
We were,
feel,
like JBL used to call Raw, that's the B show,
yeah,
you know.
did you feel when you were on SmackDown, because that was really like the peak of where you were, like where they were grooming you to be a guy, you know what I mean, before they sent you over to Raw? I was always a SmackDown guy growing up. I
Yeah.
always liked SmackDown more than Raw. I always felt SmackDown was just more unique. Even though Cena was my favorite and he was on Raw, it was great, but I felt like SmackDown just had more flavor. Did you feel though that they valued SmackDown on the same level as Raw, like Vince and everybody else? No.
No, definitely not. We did, but you could tell that the office didn't.
I wonder why that is though, man. I've heard stories about that so much, and I'm like, but they're both your company. Like they're both under the same brand though. Like SmackDown is
Yeah.
still yours. Raw is
Mhm.
yours. Why do you feel like Raw? I mean, I get Raw was before SmackDown, but like, why would you feel like you have to make Raw the more focal point of the show than SmackDown when they're literally both your shows? Like you're gonna make money either way. So it's like if SmackDown's better, well, okay, SmackDown's just better than Raw. Like I still own both shows, so it's like
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Do you think that was weird too?
I do. It's strange, but at the same time, it's the same writing crew for the most part. So I don't know. Maybe it's just like I can't imagine
Yeah,
deciding which one of my kids I like better or which one I get. It's like
yeah.
I go out of my way to like make sure that both kids get equal attention from me. I don't know.
So, some stuff I might be repetitive of stuff because I want to ask you some stuff here that people may not have saw that we talked about on TikTok. When you first got up to the roster, who were some of the people that maybe took you under the wing and people that you rode with, and when you first got there?
So when I first got there, honestly, everybody was very, very helpful and I would be able to approach everybody from like Benoit to Booker to Rey Mysterio, Taker, Kane, Batista, like all those guys would sit and talk and try to help you out. And I remember at first I was riding with a couple guys that I knew from OVW, Davari, and I think Simon Dean. And
I fucking hated him so much. I hated him. Simon Dean. I couldn't stand him, man.
Yeah, he was doing his job then, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But Batista kind of pulled me aside and he was like, "Hey, man, they're giving you like a really good push here. Nothing against those guys, but I don't think you're going to learn anything by riding with people that you already know. Like, you need to get in the car with the vet." And I didn't even wait till the next. I just literally I thought about it for a little bit, and I walked over to Benoit and I asked him, "Hey, man, you think I could jump in with you and Eddie?" And he just said, "I'll talk to Eddie about it." And then he came back to me like an hour later and said, "Yes, you can ride with us, but you're doing all the driving." And I was like, "Of course I'm doing all the driving. Yes, absolutely." And so,
God, Benoit and Guerrero, man, two guys who are obviously gone now, and one is forever remembered, the other one is forever tarnished for certain reasons. But man, what was that like riding with Eddie Guerrero and Benoit? I mean, aside of what we know happened with everything, I mean, we're talking about two of the most gifted in-ring wrestlers that you could ever see. You know what I mean? And a guy who grew up in the business, a guy who was in the business for a long time. I mean, there's probably so much knowledge that you learned.
Just always talking about the business and their sort of recipes for success. And they were funny. They told jokes. I remember like Chris would ride shotgun. And the other thing too is like Chris was he would never sleep. So even if I had a 4-hour drive and it was after Raw, so we wouldn't get to the town until like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, he would make sure that he stayed awake the entire time. That was like his rule. And super old school. And Eddie would sit right behind him in the back seat and sleep. And then he'd chime in every once in a while. I was just telling my wife this. Eddie would all of a sudden, like, you'd hear the window roll down and he'd go, sorry guys. He'd let the wind come in and clear out the car.
Yeah, he passed gas. I remember you talking about that.
Oh my God. But yeah, no, it was really awesome. The thing that was kind of crazy about it was I was just getting into WWE, so I really wasn't making a whole lot of money. You start staying in four to five hotels a week. At the time, I was like healing rooms. Me and Davari and Simon Dean would heal a room. We would one person would sleep on a cot. One person would sleep. You get two beds. Mm-hmm. And when I started riding with these guys, we all got separate rooms. So and now like we're going from staying in Motel 6s and Super 8s and stuff like that to Hilton Garden. And they were never like super expensive hotels, but $150 a night hotels. And that was stressful.
That's interesting. I think you don't have to say how much you were making at that time, but a lot of people just assume just because you're on TV that you made it. You know what I mean? Yeah, no. You're living nice.
No, and I mean, yeah, no, I was still kind of struggling, and especially when you're paying, you're spending $600-700 a week on just hotel rooms and rental cars and gas money, and then you got your food while you're on the road, and you got your, these gyms charge like $30 day fees sometimes, because they want people to sign up for memberships. Mm-hmm. So My cat is going crazy here. I'm sorry. She's just going to be part of it, huh?
Yeah. So we spoke about this a little bit on TikTok. You had Eddie Guerrero's last match before he had passed away in WWE. You know, Eddie Guerrero was. I mentioned John Cena was my all-time favorite wrestler, but when I first started watching wrestling, I started watching 2004. The first guy that caught my attention and that really kind of gravitated me was Eddie Guerrero. His charisma, his style, the lie, cheat, and steal gimmick, the lowrider gimmick. I literally thought he had all those lowriders. I thought they were his. I thought he was like that. I'm like, he's super rich. These are all his cars. Like I'm like 7, 8 years old, so I didn't know better. But just watching around that time frame, there was just something. I don't know. He caught my attention. You know what I mean? Like he stood out differently to everybody. Even when he turned into a bad guy, the feud that he had with Rey Mysterio with the custody of Dominic and stuff like that, I was still like an Eddie Guerrero guy. You know what I mean? And when he passed away, I didn't figure it out until SmackDown because I didn't watch Raw at the time because I was still a kid, so I had bedtime and I had school and everything, so I couldn't stay up that late and see what was going on. So I didn't know he had already passed away until SmackDown had came on. And I see what was going on. And this was back before dirt sheets and stuff. So I didn't know like what the dirt sheets were. So I'm figuring this out. I'm like, what is happening here? When my favorite wrestler is dead, like you're telling me he's no longer alive. Like this is happening. I mean, what was that? Do you remember that night? Like, do you remember because it was in Minnesota? Do you remember how you found out like everything that had happened? Do you just remember the feeling of like I just wrestled that guy like 3 days ago on SmackDown? Like
Yep. And then so that day was a super show. If I'm not mistaken, it was like Raw.
because they were doing the Raw and SmackDown and War at that time, leading to Survivor Series.
And it was in Minneapolis. And that night, so we were going to do the super show. And then that night, they had buses pick us up, take us to the airport. And we went on what was my first European tour at the time. And I remember the week before that, Eddie and Chris like joking about like, hey man, we're going to fuck with you when we're on the tour and don't fall asleep. Somebody might shave your eyebrows and, just telling me horror stories about stuff that had been done to other people. They were just messing with me. And then, we went to a steakhouse in Indianapolis and then we went our separate ways. We got to the airport the next morning, went our separate ways. And I remember pulling up because I live in Minneapolis. So who's my ex-wife now, drove me to the arena and I pulled in where the talent pulled in. Guy came out to let us out or to let us in. And he said, I'm sorry, but did you hear about Eddie? And I said, no. And he's like, Eddie passed. And I just I couldn't believe it. And I went inside and it was just, it was a really, really somber day. And, it's like he was so loved in the locker room, but the show's got to go on. Yeah. And so you're trying to like compartmentalize. You're trying to like process through these feelings, but I've got a job to do too. So it was kind of crazy. Luckily that day, it's just kind of crazy. My father was struggling. He was going through cancer. Like he had stage 4 brain cancer at the time, right? Actually, it was lung cancer. And it was the first time that he had been to a show. But I remember he was in a wheelchair, and this was going to be his first time and last time that he would see me in a WWE ring in person. And they didn't have me on the show that night. And I remember going up to Vince, and I felt horrible because of like this other huge thing is going on. I'm not part of the show, but I just said like, if there's any way my dad is here and he knew the situation, I was like, if there's any way I could do something, anything. And he said, all right, I'll give you, and he put me, I think it was a dark match with Val Venus. So he was like super understanding, but that
might be maybe the saddest tribute I've seen since watching wrestling. Cause I mean, obviously it was so unexpected. He's so young still. I think he's like late 30s at the time still. And then it was kind of like, the one thing that makes wrestling so difficult sometimes that you never know what's real, not real. Like stories is kayfabe, for many people. But like, no, this is real. Like people are in tears. Like they did a whole tribute show. Like this is really something that's real life. And I think some people have a hard time separating the real life and what just the entertainment value is of wrestling. Like, yes, wrestling have characters and entertainment, but they're still humans at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying? These are still people who they feel pain. You know, they feel, you know, a lot of the things that you don't think or imagine that they feel, but they're still average human beings at the end of the day, like you. I mean, I've met people, you know, I'm just a social media creator. I'm not really a famous guy, but to some of the wrestling community, I am because they don't know me. So when I go to these wrestling shows and they recognize me, I've had people come up to me and say, "Hey, man, you're pretty cool. You're pretty real. I didn't think you were like that." Well, I don't know what you think I was like though. Like I'm a guy like you. I'm just an average dude. You know what I mean? Just like
Yeah.
you. So losing one of your peers, losing one of your peers like that. I mean, especially like I said, you having his last match and you just, you know, like not even a week ago, but just a couple of days ago, like I just wrestled this guy and you're telling me he's passed. I don't know. It's just when life hits you that way, it really shows, I guess, how tough you can be mentally and how you can handle it. Like, you know, somebody that was your mentor, somebody that you cared about is now no longer here, and now you have to just find ways to move on with your own life.
But you have to move on like immediately. There's no time for mourning. There's no time for, you know, you got a job to do, and you got a job to do like right now. And then, you know, like I said, I wasn't booked on the show that night, but you know, you're still there. You're still doing stuff. They're pulling you to do interviews and
I
pictures
remember
and
that.
things like
Yeah,
that.
the interviews,
You know,
yeah.
and then, like I said, we went on. I believe that was the tour where we did 19 shows in 21 days between the shows that we did in the US, and then we went over and did a bunch of stuff in Europe, and then we came back and ended it with another US tour. It was
So
19 different countries or different cities.
yeah,
You know, it was like 10 different countries. And every night was a different thing.
right. Oh, after Eddie had passed away too, but
Mm.
to touch onto that, huh? 19 shows in 21 days. I have to
Yeah.
realistically ask you, how though? Like, how do y'all really do this shit though? Like, put your body, because I'm sure I mean, well, house shows are a little bit different, so I don't know if you're really putting your real forth effort like on house shows as you would for like a pay-per-view or something like that, but you're still taking bumps. Like you're still in the ring doing stuff. But 19 shows. I see, this is one of the reasons I knew I couldn't be wrestler. Mentally, I can't do it. There's no I need to be home. Like I'm a homebody. So like I don't mind traveling and being gone here and there, but tell me I'm gonna be gone for 19 days and I have to wrestle and then I get to go home for 2 days and then my body's gonna feel like it went through a machine and then I
Yeah.
have to go back and do it all over again. Wrestlers to me have the most utmost respect for me and the strongest will I think I've ever seen for any athletes. And some people I really don't think truly understand that aspect. For people who think it's all fake and it's not real, like y'all really don't understand what that life is like. Like
Yeah.
you're
And it's not just the taking bumps in the ring, it's all the stuff that goes in. You know, you only see people, whoever your favorite wrestler is, you know, you see them between 7 and 15, maybe 20 minutes a week. You don't see all the other stuff that goes into it, the gym, the workouts, and the traveling, and standing in line, and getting, you know, flights delayed, and there's just
you're
so much that goes into it.
you're 4 years
And
in WWE. How often do you think you were at home? Like if you had an estimate.
you, I would say, man, I'm not good with stuff like that, but like it was
Yeah.
4 days a week. I'd say 4 to 5 days, I would say like 4 to 20. Because if you did an overseas tour, it was just like you were gone for, you know, it'd be 4 days on the front end, however long the tour was, usually 7 to 10 days, and then 4 on the back end, you know? So, um, and then like you get home and you really, I remember I used to have this thing where like on the first day that I would get home, I would drop my stuff and I would go upstairs and I would pile up on the couch for
Mhm.
like 8 to 10 hours and just don't talk to me. I just want to chill. I just want to relax, decompress. Because you're on that whole time. You might not be on for the camera, but you're on for people. You're constantly interacting with people, and it can be tough. But you know, you just do it. And I think it's easier to do because one, you're living the dream. You're doing this is what I want to do. And the other thing is that everybody else is doing it too. And nobody's bitching and nobody's complaining. And if you do bitch and complain about it or sell your injuries or like, oh, you're the one that's sore. But it used to be a thing, like especially hopefully it's and I think it is different now. But like we weren't allowed to get ice backstage
Really?
after a match. Yeah, don't sell it. Like you would be looked at like, what the fuck are you doing, man?
See,
Like,
that to me is a crazy mentality. Like, and I think people have learned. I'm glad it's different now because your body can only take so much. And you see a lot of these old wrestlers, they can't do much, man. You know what I mean? Like they can barely move, barely walk. And I don't think people are thinking about it long term though. And I think that's like the old school mentality, like you said. But you know what I mean? Like when you get old, you want to be able to pick up your grandkids, play with your grandkids, do things. But
mhm.
a lot of these wrestlers, they might not be able to do that because their body has been so shot over the years for taking so many bumps. And like you said, if somebody else is doing it, I mean, Undertaker is one of my all-time favorite wrestlers, and I've heard stories about so many injuries that he's had throughout his career and no selling it. I mean, some people may not have known. Well, I didn't even know this till a couple years ago, but the Hell in a Cell match he had with Mankind, he had a broken ankle going into that match, and he still did a Hell in a Cell match against Mankind. When he broke his eye socket, he just put a mask on his face and still went out there and wrestled with a broken eye socket. Who's do like who does stuff like that? You know what I mean? Like that
Oh, that's it.
mentality is like like I break my eye socket, I'm not coming out the house for a month. Like you're not gonna see me. I'm gonna heal
Yeah.
properly before
You know,
I.
the other thing too is like the hours in a day, right? Like all the traveling and stuff. Like leave your house at 4 a.m. to get to the airport, to check in, to stand in line, to get on a flight, to get to whatever town it is, or sometimes you might have a couple flights with layovers and stuff like that. Then you stand in line for the rental car place, and then you drive. Anyway, like it turns out to be sometimes you're up and working for like 17 or 18 hours in a day. And that's just what you do. And I remember doing the movie. I did the movie with WWE Films, and these were like legit, Hollywood people working on the set. And there was a day where we were filming something, and I remember the assistant director said, "Guys, we have to get this shot done. We have 45 minutes to get this shot done. If we don't, we're screwed." And when I went over to her and I pulled her aside and I was like, "Hey, let's just fucking just stay until we get it done. Like however long it takes, let's just do it." She was like, "Oh, that doesn't work that way here." And it
Yeah, I
was my
guess.
first taste of like, 8 hours is 8 hours. Like, if you go over, they got to pay like they get in a lot of trouble if they go over. And the rest of the world, most of the rest of the world operates that way, and I think that's a good thing.
The adrenaline bug though has to be a real thing because when your body is so beat up, I mean, they've wrestlers have said, I mean, when you go out there though, your mind you just feel different. You know what I'm saying? The adrenaline just takes your body over. Like how
Yeah.
how much real is that for especially when you've experienced it?
I used to watch. This was even before I was hired by the company because I did a lot of extra work. I would go to WWE and I would see Eddie backstage, and he would just look like he was hobbling around. He's, kind of like beaten up, hurting person, trying not to sell, but like, you can tell when, oh, that guy's been through a lot. And and then the music would hit and he would fucking go out there and turn it on, and then he would come back through the curtain, go right back to being the crippled old man. At,
When
at,
you
he was, he was in his early 30s when I was seeing him do that because he died when he was like 37 or 38, I think.
yeah, late I think it was late 30s when he had passed away, if I'm not mistaken. For you though, just based off of being in the business and all the injuries and everything like that, how do you what motivated you to keep pushing yourself even when you're in the hotel and you're like, man, my back hurts, my leg or whatever, and oh my god, I gotta get up at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. Or I know back then too, people would say maybe sometimes if you didn't go have a drink with the boys, maybe some of the boys felt like you weren't one of the guys. Like, hey man, you don't
Yeah.
want to come down and hang out with us. And so it's like, oh, well, I guess I got to go down and drink when I don't want to go down. And how do you motivate yourself to? And especially, I mean, I don't know how old your kids are, but maybe you had kids back then, and maybe you're not
I
seeing
did
them.
it.
No, you didn't. Okay, so even you talked about your dad being sick. Like my dad's like, how do you just motivate yourself knowing that maybe you're not seeing your family as much? What if my dad passes away and I'm not there? You know what I mean? Like what if I just know, like, how do you just keep yourself going?
I actually had that discussion with my family at the time, and I was just getting going, and he was really, really struggling, and at the end of his life. And I remember saying, like, I can only be home one day a week at the time because I was going. I would travel for WWE for a full schedule for house shows, TV, a pay per view if they had it, and then I would fly to OVW, or I would fly to Louisville and do OVW TV on Wednesday, and then Thursday I would go home, and then Friday I would be back out on the road again so I had one day off. And I remember saying, like, if you, what do you think? I feel guilty being out on the road and I don't want. And he was like, Ken, you are going to do you can't do anything for me here. You have wanted this. You've worked hard for it. Like, I want to see you succeed, and I can watch you on TV and I can know that, like, you're doing it. And it was just, aside from that, it just wasn't a question. I never had to, like, motivate myself. I wanted to get up and go to work. I've had some really shitty jobs before where, today, I don't know.
What did you do before?
I was a security guard at a nuclear power plant, or
Oh,
I was an
wow.
armed guard at a nuclear power plant. That was a decent job. But I've also done, like, stucco, drywall. I
Yeah.
worked in some factories, and
That's how I kind of feel now. I mean, I don't have to work full time anymore because I do make some stuff off social media, but I work at the airport, so it's like
Mhm.
I do have those days where it's like, it's not what I want to do with my life. But I mean,
Yeah, and you want to, like, everybody wants to, like, make a difference, do something, and some of those jobs you just get sucked into this rut where you're just like, I'm just another number. So, with that, also having gone through those experiences and struggled, and now I'm living the dream. Like, I'm gonna fucking, this is what I do.
so I want to ask you, man. I remember when they first brought you up. You were doing the whole Mr. Kennedy. Got to say it twice, right?
Mhm.
And they were building yourself up, and I wasn't sure what they were going to make of you, what they were going to do with you, because there were some other guys that I thought they were going to use. One guy that I really thought was going to be big was Chris Masters. I remember when they first brought him up and when he was doing the whole Master Lock Challenge. And I mean, looking at his physique, I'm like, my gosh, this guy looks like $1,000,000, right? Like, and he was like 21, 22. I'm like, oh yeah, he's going to be somebody big for sure. Didn't work out that way. But when I really felt that they were going to do something with you is when they put you in the feud with the Undertaker. Ain't nobody going to be in the feud with the Undertaker. It's the Undertaker we're talking about. So that's when I really started to pay attention to you more, because I remember they brought up MVP around that time too, and I liked him a lot. I'm like, oh, that guy, he got swag. I mean, MVP he got some pizzazz, he got some swag to him. I liked him a lot. And you guys would do some tag team stuff here and there against Brothers of Destruction. I remember that stuff, but the
Yep.
matches you had with Undertaker, No Mercy, you guys had the first blood match. I remember the last Rider match, very good match, by the way. The last Rider match I really liked a lot. But
Thank you.
that I mean, when they tell you you're gonna be feuding with the Undertaker, are you like, all right, who's fucking with me here? Like, come on, like, or are you just like, I'm ready, like, let's do it.
At that time, I was like, I'm ready. I belong here. Honestly, like, I don't know. It's weird. I'm
No,
not trying to
it's
be
good to
like,
believe in yourself,
I'm
man.
not trying to be boastful or anything. It's just like, that was my mentality at the time. I had put in the work where I felt like I belong here. Like, let's do this. So but it was still at the same time. I remember standing in the ring, Oklahoma City, on a house show. First time I'm facing the Undertaker, and those lights go out, and you hear that gong, and the place goes crazy. And there is that part of you that goes, how the fuck am I standing right here? How is this possible?
What is that? What do you feel when he coming out? Like really when you watch his entrance, are you literally like, do you feel like you're gonna pass out? You got goosebumps? Is your adrenaline pump more like I'm so ready for this? Because I've heard Stone Cold, he did an interview one time where he had ideas of things that he was gonna do in the match when the bell rang and everything, and then as Undertaker was coming out, he said he forgot everything he had thought of. It just went away. Like he just was so zoned into that entrance, and he's just like, I couldn't remember what we had talked about, or like what was gonna happen.
The beautiful thing about that particular night was actually this happened often. Undertaker and I didn't talk in the back. I mean, we talked, but not about what we were going to do in the match. And that night in particular, our first night, he just said like, "Hey, we're just going to call him in the ring. Just listen to me. Just do." And he goes, "Please just listen to me. If I tell you to punch me one time. If I tell you to kick me once." Stuff like that. So like I knew that all I had to do was make sure that one punch fucking looks good and is snappy, and and then he would say like, powder, and he'd charge after me, or he'd just do that like head snap, and then I'd dive out of the ring, and I just had to make sure that my shit was on point, and that's all I needed to do. It was really like it was actually really freeing. It was one of the I wasn't nervous about it at all. I mean, like I was, but it was all positive nerves. And there was a bunch of times like that. Like we were in the Philippines and we were working the main event, and I walked up to him. I said, "What do you want to do tonight?" Just out of respect. And he goes, "Work my leg, and at some point, I'll drop you on your head." Meaning, like
Tombstone, yeah.
Yeah. So that's what we did. And we went out and did like 23 or 25 minutes or something like that. Going back to like what you were saying about what you're feeling in that moment, I was like married to Taker for like, I want to say 8 months to almost a year. It was
that long. Okay.
It was between all the stuff that we would do, because we worked each other on house shows, the tag stuff that we did with MVP and Kane and Batista, and there were a lot of like 4-man or 8-man tags and stuff like that. That some form of Batista, the Brothers of Destruction, we were in that mix. And I never, he's got the longest entrance in the business. Taker's entrance takes 10 minutes every single night, and I never once was like, "Can we fucking speed this up?" Like I loved every minute of it. It never got old.
Man, Undertaker's specimen was, especially at that time, he didn't break kayfabe either, so you didn't really know if like who is this guy? You know what I mean? Like what was this guy really about? Overall, how did you feel about the feud, the last Ryder match? The last Ryder match was one of my favorite matches of probably your career for sure. Especially, I still had the DVD somewhere in there in a box, but my grandma used to. I was one of the weird kids where I wasn't one of the kids that like bought the wrestling action figures and wanted to play wrestling. Like all I wanted to do was watch it. So my grandma would just buy me DVDs because she know I didn't want to play with it, and the video games too. So I would get like SmackDown vs. Raw every year. But when Christmas would come up or something would come up, she would know I would want the DVDs. Like I just give me the DVD so I can watch it. And Armageddon 2006 was one of them that I got. Crazy show. This is the show that Joey Mercury shattered his face in that ladder match.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and Cena and Batista were in the main event, teaming up with King Booker and Finley. It was a crazy show, right? But the last Ride match, I've always felt I was just a different, unique kind of wrestling fan more than people that I grew up with, because the older I got, the more I start to love it, and I'm really big into storytelling, and I was gravitated towards that feud in that match in particular, and I loved, the aspect when you threw Taker off the top of the Armageddon stuff, and you're like, oh, he's done with, and then the effects what they were to do when you're in the car, you think it's over, and then he sits up in the back, you know what I mean? And you're like, holy shit, Taker he's coming back to life or whatever you think. But how did you when the feud was over with, in your mind, did you not in a cocky way, but did you believe like, I think I could be a world champion, or I believe they have something for me. Like, no way. After the matches we were putting on and what we did, I cannot go up from here.
Oh yeah, I knew it was going to happen. Like it was just a a matter of time. I know, but I also like I wasn't. I don't want to say I was cocky in that sense. Like
Yeah,
I got this shit in the bag. It was just like this is going to happen. Like
yeah.
it's going to be the
More of a
natural
believing in
progression.
yourself. Like you believe in like
Yeah.
I know how good I am, and
Yep.
if I'm able to work with Taker out of everybody, and especially if he gives you the nod, if after the stuff, if
Mhm.
he's like, yeah,
It was
you're
after because he pulled me up after my match with Batista. I had a match with Batista at
are you talking about the one at the bash when you bled?
Great American Bash,
Yeah.
and honestly, I had no idea going into that morning when I left the hotel. I had no idea if it was going to be like a competitive match or if it was going to be a squash or what. And when I got to the building and Arn was our producer and he was like, no, it's pretty much 50-50. Like,
To match. Yeah.
and then you're going to get the win because Batista is not going to relinquish. He's going to kick the shit out of you and lose his shit, So, but and then I ended up bleeding like I stuck. I got hard weighed 2 different times. I got hard weighed within the first minute of our match, I got some great color from that. And then when he posted me, I hit my head so hard on that post.
Yeah, so I
And
remember if you want to backtrack, you told me the
yeah,
story that you weren't supposed to. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
I asked if I could bleed. I was like, it just feels, he's coming back off this injury. This he's gonna lose his shit at the end, and like it just feels like I should be bleeding. And no, you can't because Taker is gonna bleed uh, in the Punjabi prison match, right?
great
And
concept too.
so
Yeah, we all love that.
yeah, or maybe it was the Kali was gonna bleed.
Yeah, well,
But
Khali was supposed to be in the match, and then Big Show replaced him. So it was
that's
Big
right.
Show, yeah, Big Show and Taker in the Punjabi prison. Yes.
But they told me definitely no, you can't. And so for whatever reason, I just boom, I got busted open, and it ended up when I watched that match back. I'm so glad that I did get on.
Oh, dude, it made it more intense. I remember
Totally.
watching that as a kid. I was a big Batista fan. Oh my god, I was a huge into Batista, bro. His entrance, the pyro, and everything. I was like
Mhm.
his aggression. But yeah, when that happened, and had you on the turnbuckle, and he has his knee on your throat, and he's pushing, and the blood's coming out, and he looked like
Mhm.
a monster. You know what I mean? Like the aggression, and I'm like, oh man, this dude looks like a beast. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it made
I
it good.
remember.
Did you get any heat for that? Like bleeding because you weren't
No,
supposed to? Oh,
oh
okay.
no, fuck no. Like because everybody knew that it was hard way, and everybody knew that it was accidental. But it gave me the opposite of heat. Like when I came back through the curtain, I literally just walked through and I looked at Vince and he was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Fuck yeah, I'm good." And he was like, "Oh yes," like you're a man. And honestly, that was like one of the best things that ever happened to me in my career
Yeah, that was
and
beautiful.
I believe, like thinking back, I believe just like what we were talking about with Cena before. I think most people that if they got hard way during a match, they would continue through it too. They would power through it. I just happened to be the right guy. So, you know, and then
So
it was a couple weeks later, Taker pulled me aside at the house show and he was like, "Hey, I saw the shit you did with Dave, and I really like it. And I think there's something between you and me. I'd like to explore it. I'm going to talk to the boss." And like believe half of what you hear or none of what you hear and half of what you see in the wrestling business. So I just like tried to keep that like not get it too excited about it.
mhm.
And then like the next weekend house show loop, he said, "Did the boss talk to you?" And I said, "No." He goes, "We're going to do a program. We're going to get at least 3 pay-per-views out of it. Um, and we'll go from there. And then I want to work with you the next week. And then the next week after that was going to be Oklahoma City. And I don't remember where we went after that, but and then that, no, we
So
were away to the races. And in that first night, he just said to me, he's like, "I want to feel you out. I want to see if we have chemistry or not."
mhm.
And then that night, in Oklahoma City, we came back to the curtain. He was like, I was happy with that, man. I really liked it. And then the next night, he allowed me to like put some of my own little, he allowed me to call spots, and then slowly but surely it was I earned my way in.
So because I'm such a nerd, I remember that timeline after you did the stuff with Taker. Royal Rumble comes around, you had the world title match with Batista at the Royal Rumble, and then Money in the Bank happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
I ain't gonna lie, I wasn't happy when you went at first because I was a big CM Punk guy at that
Yeah.
time because I had
Yeah.
watched his. I've always been a big CM Punk guy, so I really wanted him to get that spot. But you got the Money in the Bank, but then things didn't work out for a lot of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard, I don't know what's true or not true. I've heard a lot of speculations. I heard that you had heat. I heard that you were injured, and then you weren't injured. From your perspective, looking back now, do you feel like they took the Money in the Bank off of you because they had doubts about you, or was it something that you had an injury and you really believe they thought you were hurt, and then you realized you weren't as hurt as they said you were? I mean, what's your personal preference from that
No, I
aspect?
mean, the week before that happened, I remember they flew me to Stanford, and I toured. I was doing something at the headquarters,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember walking around and talking to Shane McMahon, and Shane was like, we believe in you. Like, we're gonna. He didn't really like go into detail, but he alluded to the fact that like they were gonna put some stock in me.
Mm-hmm.
And then the literally the week before I got injured. So I left SmackDown one day, and I got called back by Michael Hayes. Michael Hayes said, "You need to go talk to the boss right now. Where are you?" And I was like, "Oh, we're like 10 minutes down the road." He said, "Get your ass back here." We drove back, and I'm walking down the hall. Batista's coming out of Vince's office, and Batista just came up to me and gave me a big hug. He's like, "I'm happy for you, buddy." And I went in, and it was Stephanie and Vince. And Vince was like, "Look, we wanted to," and I had said via promo that I was going to cash in the Money in the Bank briefcase next year at WrestleMania. That was the plan as far as I knew. So he said, we're planning on having Taker as our champion, and we were planning on having him hold on to that title for a really long time. Unfortunately, he tore his biceps, so he needs to have surgery. So we're gonna next week on, and he laid out this whole scenario. Next week on SmackDown, I was gonna come out. Taker was gonna have a cage match against Mark Henry. He was gonna barely squeak out a victory, and I think maybe somebody else was gonna come out, do some damage, and then I was gonna come out and basically cash in the Money in the Bank briefcase on a corpse. And he was like, "Then we're gonna have a new champion," and that was it. And I remember the two people that knew about it were Mark Carrano and Michael Cole. And we happened to go out to a bar that night, and they were like, "Fuck yeah, buddy," and buying me shots and stuff like that. Here, I'm trying not to like get too excited because it hadn't happened. And then went home, and then my first house show. So Tuesday, I was supposed to cash it in.
Mm-hmm.
Friday or Saturday, we had a house show in Poughkeepsie, and I took a bump, just a normal bump in the ring, and felt something pop in my triceps. I rolled out to the floor, and I remember Finley standing there, and he was like, "Whoa, that doesn't look good." And by the time I got downstairs, my arm was completely swollen. I believe it had started changing colors, which is weird because bruises oftentimes take forever to like actually show up. But, that night, went to Hornswoggle, drove me to the ER in Erie, Pennsylvania, and I went in, had an MRI, and they just told me like, "Go sit at your hotel and just wait. We'll let you know what happened." And Steph called me and said, "Ken, you tore your triceps off the bone, and we're gonna have to reattach it, and it's gonna take like could take 9 months, could take longer than that. Unfortunately, we still need to get that title off Taker because he's got to have surgery. So we're going to send the jet to pick you up. A car's going to come get you. You'll fly to Penn State, Edge is going to challenge you for a briefcase. You're going to drop it to Edge, and then he's going to go on tomorrow night and do what you were supposed to do. I said, okay, and I remember thinking, like, at the time, oh, but if I'm gone for 9 months and I have 1 year to cash this in, I could fucking hold on to it and still cash it in at WrestleMania. We're still good. But look, this is what they're asking me to do. It's business. I'll be good in the long run. I'll get back there somehow. Like, it'll be cool.
Yeah, I always felt because Taker had a cage match with Batista, and then Mark Henry came out and attacked him, and then Edge came out and cashed in and stuff.
Yeah,
But
that's
and I always felt, I mean, I get they had to get the title off Taker, but I always felt like, why couldn't they just put it back on Batista though? Like Batista could have just won the cage match, and he could have just been the champion. And like you said, I mean, you could have held on to it because you didn't even go away. I don't think you went away for maybe a little bit, but I don't think it was 9 months.
So no, the greatest thing was, well, I don't know if it's great, but whatever, it is what it is. So I go and I drop that briefcase to Edge on Raw, and then the next morning I flew to Birmingham, Alabama, and Dr. Andrews, I remember sitting on his table, and he came up and he started like feeling around in my arm, and he was like, "That's not a tear. I don't think that's a tear." And I was like, "Excuse me?" And he was like, I can't find your MRI anywhere, so I can't know for sure. And they made me go through another MRI. And then a couple hours later, he said, "No, it's just a large hematoma, which is like a bunch of broken blood vessels." So it was like a misdiagnosis, which completely changed everything. And so I ended up being out for like a month, maybe a month and a half, and then came back. And
Damn, that's tough, man. That's tough because you already had dropped the briefcase at the time, so it was already done.
Yeah,
Like,
but it's wrestling, and light storylines, like it's WWE. They can flip the script on a dime, and they have to oftentimes. It's such a hard job to have. You got to write for 52 weeks a year, and then you got to like, oh, this guy just got hurt. Oh, well, we got to like pivot, and that's what they did. They pivoted, and so I was like, I'm going to pivot too. I didn't get hissy about it. I wasn't mad about it or upset. It just is what it is. And
why do you think that you mentioned you had mentioned a minute ago that okay, I'm just gonna get back there and stuff like that, but it never really felt the same for your career after that. Is there reasons for that, or do you think just things that changed and different? Do you think because I seen some wrestlers that spoke about like, I guess if you get hurt too often or you get hurt, maybe WWE you get maybe injury prone. Like, I don't know, man, but I always felt that only applied to certain people because a lot of people can get hurt, but not everybody's gonna lose that spot though.
I did get, I don't know, like, I don't necessarily know that was the tone in the locker room, but it was definitely the tone in the wrestling community or whatever, the internet wrestling community, right? Like, that was always injury prone. And it was like, if somebody comes up to you and smashes you in the kneecap, right? And you fucking have surgery on your knee and you're sitting on the sidelines for a year, and then you come back and somebody like smashes your other kneecap, like, you wouldn't say that person's injury prone, like I got these injuries that so, and there was a couple times where I was actually injured by other people. That the tricep one was just like a fluke, but yeah. So I don't know if that was the deal. I do know that like I stopped at some point. I can't pinpoint it, but like I stopped caring so much, and it just became another job. And I was, kind of bitter, and it's just weird. I told somebody this the other day that I was booked on a pay-per-view against Ric Flair. I'm working. You're going to work Rick at the pay-per-view, and I was just like, okay, tell me what to do, and I'll do it. And I wasn't even excited about it. I didn't put in a whole lot of, and I never phoned it. I never phoned it in when I was in the ring with anybody, but I would say I phoned it in the gym, or not going to the gym, and staying back at the hotel and bringing my video game system and doing that instead. And I never really put a whole lot of effort into pitching ideas or improving my character, my promo skills. So I got complacent. And
You think there's a reason for that? Did your like lack of love of wrestling kind of fall out, or just life changes?
it was a bunch of different things. One of them was, it was a couple of injuries that piled up. And then there was a period of time where I used painkillers. That definitely played a hand in some of the things. I got in a little trouble backstage for bunch of different things, Um, and then I was very frustrated because all of the stuff that had brought me to the dance was like my character work, my over the top, swagger, I guess, whatever, my character. And there was a lengthy period of time where Vince was like, stop being so goddamn entertaining, stop being so funny. And I was really, really struggling to understand what he wanted from me. And now it's funny, I just watched something earlier. I was watching this promo that I did where it was sort of like I'm just sitting looking at the camera talking. It was the build up to one of our matches. I think it was the first blood match.
Mhm.
And I remember like, oh my God, I'm doing so much. Like I'm so extra. So I get it now what he was talking to me. He was just trying to like reel me back and make me more believable. And that was really, really frustrating. I started to get kind of pissy because of that,
So why did they release you from WWE for that reason? Because they just felt like, listen, man, we feel like you're not really into it, or did you need to separate? Did you need to walk away for a little bit and kind of figure things out?
No, I mean, this is another huge story. The thing happened. I came back. I was gone for 9 months. Came back. I worked that 10-man tag on Raw,
Yes,
and
that's
I
the
was
Lakers and Nuggets
yep,
thing. Yeah,
yep, and Randy said that I dropped him on his head, and I got a ton of heat for that, and I,
I've heard about
I
that.
don't believe I did. I know that I didn't, but that's another story. But yeah, and so it was like I believe that at that point Vince was tired of hearing my name in a negative light, and he was just like, "Fucking get rid of him," And then rather than taking that and being motivated and completely changing my life, I sort of had a chip on my shoulder, and I had a chip on my shoulder for I, my entire career at TNA. Like I had that chip on my shoulder. Like I couldn't even bring myself to watch WWE program. Like I didn't watch anything for probably 5 years after I left.
Really?
Didn't watch the pay-per-view, didn't watch Raw, nothing. Um, and then I started realizing like this was my fault. Like no matter what Randy said I did, whatever. Had I been doing all the right things leading up to that moment, had I been busting my ass and just going out there and doing my job, him saying that wouldn't like Vince would have been like, okay, whatever, But it was definitely my fault in that sense.
Yeah, I had heard. I mean, like I wasn't there, so I don't know what's real and not real. You can't believe everything on the internet, but I had heard stuff for years about you had heat with Orton, had heat with some other wrestlers at that particular time, and that was part of the reason of your demise from WWE. But when you separated from WWE, why TNA? What made you attracted to go to TNA at that time? Because TNA was hot at that time, to me, at
Well, I
least in my
mean,
mind.
there really wasn't another option, to be honest. Like
Yeah,
that was the other game. That was it. And at the time I remember when I first got signed there, I had to prove myself. It wasn't like I went in there and had a sweet deal. Some people believed in me, knew what I could do, but I just got like a real basic deal when I first got in there. And And then I was able to bust my ass in the ring and do my thing. And I attribute a lot of that to like Eric Bischoff giving me, hey, like, I know there were some things over in WWE that you were frustrated about, promos and the way that everything's like super scripted. And he was like, I know what you can do. If we hand you a script, it's just a basic concept. It's just a basic outline. It's just going to be bullet points, and you can fill it in and do, even if it says a particular thing, like, we can talk about it, we can change it, So I did that, and then I was able to, like, I went within the first year, I renegotiated and got a 3-year deal, and then I ended up staying there for 6 years. But yeah, but as far as there really was no other option other than Japan.
Yeah, you had a lot of great stuff in TNA with Kurt Angle, Jeff Hardy. I love the ladder match you guys had. You and Jeff Hardy, Bully Ray, of course, Aces and Eight storyline you guys had it as well. What would you say differences between just TNA and WWE? We know WWE is the bigger monster, but as far as maybe the locker room or just anything in general, what were some of the things that you just felt? Was it more relaxed? Did you feel more confident in TNA?
Definitely, it was just chill over in WWE or over in TNA. There was a definite hierarchy in WWE, and there were some guys that were very competitive behind the scenes, and I never felt like that was the thing at TNA. Like, everybody was just chill. The major differences were, I think, the marketing. Like, WWE's a fucking machine.
Yeah.
Like, the reason why they are in the position that they're in is because of really hard work and a lot of marketing, and the TNA just didn't have that. It was sort of frustrating. I remember, like, being at a show in Baltimore, Maryland one time. It was at a baseball park. It was like 7,000 seat arena or stadium, and I think we had 162 people there that night. Like, legit. And they were all scattered around, and I remember they had the ring on the pitcher's mound. So there was, like, just imagine all the distance between the ring and the first row was just crazy. It was like a mile away. 162 people scattered around, and that night ROH ran just down the road and sold out like an 800-seat arena. It was just like stuff like that. And on that show that I was on, it was like me, Kurt Angle, Ric Flair, Matt Hardy,
Sting, others,
like RVD, fucking AJ Styles, Abyss.
Yeah, because you guys had a stacked roster. I mean, the talent on that roster was known for some people who had left WWE, like Christian, Kurt Angle, Booker T, and those guys would go to TNA. But TNA already had their own guys too, like a Samoa Joe. They had Abyss. They had AJ Styles, of course, and they had guys under their own brand that could compete and hang with the WWE guys that were previously there. So you guys were, one thing I really loved about TNA was I thought they were able to mesh it well with bringing in some of the WWE guys, but not really having them steal, people who had been there for so long, their spots. Like, you guys were able to mesh it well where people got opportunities and they were able to tell great stories, have great matches, and I didn't feel like anybody was taking, like, when you came in or Jeff Hardy, I never felt like you guys were coming in and you took a spot from Samoa Joe. You took a spot from AJ Styles, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like it was equal. Everybody was, okay, these WWE guys, they're already valuable because people who watch WWE wrestling, they know who these people are. So we can instantly use them. But our fans, they know who these guys are too. So we got to keep them. I feel like they were very good at making that balance.
Definitely. I think one of the things that was frustrating about, like you said, there was that stacked roster, and it felt like they were adding to it weekly or, at least monthly. Somebody else would come in. And the thing was, like, they would never do any marketing for it. They would never, like, do a build up to, oh, this fucking guy's coming. It was just sort of And I get why they did it, because they felt like, well, if people hear that Jeff Hardy debuted last night and they weren't watching it, they're going to tune in next week. Hopefully they'll tune in. And I just don't think that ever occurred. It never actually happened. But
Why
like
do
there
you?
were all these people that would make their debuts that would be, if it was flip flopped and they were going over to WWE, they would have made a huge think about it.
Oh yeah. Marketing is a main key. Were you guys and girls always in like because I don't know who was one of the. I mean, Jeff Jarrett obviously is one of the founders, but would you
He was
always?
out by the time I was there. Jeff didn't have anything to do with.
Okay, so Dixie or whoever was, the higher ups. Would you guys always like? You guys have to. You gotta promote. You gotta market. Like we have all these people here, but if we're going to baseball stadiums and there's 100 people, we should at least have thousands. I mean, we may not fill up the whole show, but when we got Kurt Angle and we got Jeff Jarrett and Jeff Hardy, yourself, and many others, and AJ Styles, and we only got 100 people at the show. That's a problem. You know what I mean? Like we have a roster here. Like we have something special. We may not be WWE level, but we have something great here.
Then the answer was, you guys need to tweet more. Like honestly, at the time, that was just like more. You guys need to do the marketing or whatever. Like, so it is what it is. Again, it was like a super awesome time, but there were things like they hired this rider truck to move the ring around. So you go from city to city in this fucking rider truck. Somebody had a cousin that owned a company that would wrap trucks, and they said, hey, for like $600 you can wrap that rider truck and put the TNA logo on it, and they just wouldn't do it. Well, no, it's not.
What the hell, man? It's funny you said that, because about a year or so ago I was a part of something, a podcast and stuff, and me and a couple other people, they had a really good following and stuff like that, but they were trying to make wrestling really new. And like, listen, if you're going to treat this good, you gotta promote this like you do your other shows that are really big. And you guys have certain connections. You guys can help us get these interviews with wrestlers and stuff that we don't have those type of connections. We can only do so much, and they wanted us to do that stuff. It's like, but we can reach out to certain people, but they're not going to see the stuff that we see. We can DM them on Instagram, but they're not going to see the shit that we DM them. They get tons of DMs like that all the time from people. We're not the only ones reaching out to them for interviews or some type of stuff, especially when they're the bigger the superstar, the more stuff that you want. You know what I mean? Like we tried really hard to kind of put that in their brains, but they were kind of like TNA was like, they just weren't they weren't hearing it. I don't know what it was, but it was like, and it didn't work out. We ended up splitting, going separate ways, because we had to do our own stuff. Because like, listen, if you're not gonna help us, you're not gonna treat this the way you treat your other stuff. It's kind of like, we're not, we got something bigger than this. You know what I mean? Like we got something special going on. We need to try to make this bigger than what it is. So I understand that aspect. I mean, it has to be beyond frustrating for especially when you are sharing a locker room with Samoa Joe and Bully Ray, and you got Jeff Hardy there, and you got AJ Styles. I mean, AJ Styles legit at one point you could say was the best wrestler on the planet. I mean, that he wasn't in WWE, but legit he was the best wrestler on the planet at one point.
Yep. 100%. I agree. I said that too. Like, I believe that when he was in WWE. Now, granted, I wasn't watching at the time, so I didn't know if any of the other people could. But honestly, from what I knew and what I had seen, like AJ was the shit, man.
Who would you say, just from your work that you've done, who would be if you had to name 5 wrestlers, like the 5 best wrestlers you've been in the ring with? Like you put me in the ring with those guys, we're not having a bad match. Who would you say the 5 best workers that you think you worked with?
Shawn Michaels,
of course.
Kurt Angle, Shawn Michaels, Kurt Angle, AJ Styles.
3 great answers, by the way.
Undertaker, and I really, really enjoyed working with Bubba. Like we had great chemistry. Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. At least those top 4,
for sure.
And they could be interchangeable. But
No, in no particular order. I mean, those are three good. I mean, Shawn Michaels for many people is considered the greatest in-ring performer ever. You know, for many people who watched throughout years. AJ Styles, I don't feel like as far behind. Kurt Angle, I think is to me. I think Kurt Angle is maybe the greatest technical wrestler I've ever seen. You know, just power and ring wise. I mean, he brought out so much intensity and believability, and part of that maybe come from his Olympic background as well. You know, bringing that style into it. But Kurt Angle was the shit, man. He's one of my top 5 all time favorites for sure, no doubt. Like
my,
he was the reason I started watching. Like my uncle got me into wrestling, got me into WWE, and then for years he was telling me about TNA. Man, you gotta check out this TNA, man. TNA is killing it, man. TNA is really good. You gotta check it out. And I'm like, yeah, but I mean, I'm just a kid. I don't really care about WWE. I'm like 7, 8 years old. No, I don't care about no TNA. And then he had told me, hey, you know, your boy, because he knew I was a big Kurt Angle guy, and he hadn't been on TV in a while, but he had told me, he said, you know, your boy Kurt Angle, he over in TNA now. I said, what? He showed me the debut with Samoa Joe and stuff and everything, and then I was like, okay,
yeah,
if Kurt Angle's here, this got to be serious now. I got to check this out. And man, I was hooked, man. I watched TNA faithfully from about 2006 to about 2013. It's when AJ Styles left. When AJ Styles left, that's when it kind of really started to kind of go downhill because they were changing a lot of things. It just, I don't know, I feel like they were doing too much. They were trying to compete with Raw on Mondays. I'm like, what are y'all doing? Why were you competing with Raw on Mondays? That's not gonna work. But for a long time, I always had felt, even though WWE was WWE, just being a really wrestling fan, I always had felt TNA was to me was just as good. I would go to the house shows. I went to a house show in Cincinnati one time, and I don't remember. The main event was Kurt Angle and somebody. I think it was Kurt Angle and Abyss in the main event, or Kurt Angle. No, Kurt Angle. It was Kurt Angle, maybe somebody else. But I remember Abyss had wrestled Matt Morgan. I remember Booker T was there, and this is right after Test had passed away. So he did a promo for Test in the ring and stuff like that, and had talked about that. And I remember just going to that show, TNA Lockdown 2011 in US Bank Arena, they used to call it back then. I remember that because you had a match on that show. And I remember going to that show, and that was like the best wrestling show I'd been to in years before I went to some other shows and I got older and got my own money. Because I remember, you know, Kurt Angle and Jeff Jarrett, he did the moonsault off the cage. And I think you had the triple threat with Sting and RVD, you know what I mean, in the cage. And then it was Aces. It was, it was, Fortune versus Immortal in the main event and stuff. And that's when AJ Styles had to return and stuff like that. But even going to that show, I remember they couldn't even sell out that show. I remember there were empty seats, you know, within the show. And I was kind of sitting there like, why so many people aren't here? Like this is a really good show here. You know, they got a really stacked talent. So now we said the marketing stuff, that makes sense from all angles. You know what I mean? Now I understand. Okay, they weren't putting in the effort to marketing a lot of that stuff, and that's probably why a lot of those guys ended up leaving. You know what I mean? Like, you know, if you're not marketing enough, you're probably not making as much money as you could be making. We could be making a lot more. And if you're having a Kurt Angle on the show, I mean, you get Kurt Angle and not cheap. You know what I mean? So I mean, these are top level talent. So that makes a lot of sense. TNA though, do you feel like I don't know how much more time you got here. We've been on here for over an hour. Jesus, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I can go for a couple more minutes.
Do you feel the way you were presented in TNA? Do you feel like that's something that you could have did in WWE, being the world champion, because I mean you were beating guys like Jeff Hardy and you were beating a lot of the top guys, you know, within that company. And I remember watching, you know, your stuff, and I was kind of like, man, if they don't make him the champion in TNA, that's really gonna be kind of a miss from a fan perspective, you know, just watching. Because as a fan, you can tell who's kind of on the upcoming, who has potential to be certain spots. And I'm like, if they don't give this guy something, like if he ain't getting that world title, they kind of gonna drop the ball. You know what I mean? And did you kind of have that same? Did your mentality kind of pick up and your love for wrestling kind of start to get back in?
Yeah, definitely. And I 100% felt like I had the WWE marketing machine behind this right now. Like, I mean, one particular thing was I had this idea after watching Vince. Vince used to cut promos and people used to chant asshole at him, you know, like, asshole.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it would go on forever. And I remember thinking, like, Bill, what if you got to flip that around where asshole was like a positive chant, you know? And I started, I had a catchphrase, nice guys finish last. Thank God I'm an asshole.
I
And I
remember
was
the asshole
using
t-shirt and everything. Yeah.
but I was using it when I was at OVW. And when I went up to the active roster, I remember the first meeting I had with Vince was my third or fourth week. He brought me in the office. It was him, Johnny Ace, Stephanie, Kevin Dunn. Like, it was a big deal. And he was like, asking me. It was basically like an interview. And he was like, we're bringing you on board. And um, he said, do you have any catchphrases? And I said, yeah, nice guys finish last. Thank God I'm an asshole. And he said, we can't do that. They had just gone PG, or they had just, started toning it down, no swearing. So he was like, absolutely not, we can't do that. Um, and then I remember WrestleMania 23, after I won the Money in the Bank, Michael Hayes came up to me and he said, hey, this was early in the day. He said, just start thinking, because after you win the Money in the Bank, you're gonna run back here and cut a quick promo, and you know what? Think about this as like your Austin 316 moment. Like, that's what they're looking for, something like that. And I was like, here's where I'm gonna hit it. Nice guys finish last. Thank God I'm an asshole. And for some reason, it was WrestleMania. I would have gotten away with it too, but for some reason, I was like, better, because I had brought it up to Vince, and he told me no once. I should probably run it by him. And I ran it by him, unfortunately, and the answer was no. And I fucking knew that I should have just done it, because I feel like the next night. So then fast forward to, I'm in TNA and I get the same sort of opportunity, and I'm like, now I'm gonna hit this, right? And I hit it, and like the fans almost instantly started chanting, "We are assholes, we are assholes," and I was like, that was the sort of the vision that I had for it all along. And as you know, when fans start chanting things, WWE listens, and they market it, and they do really well at
So that
taking
was
the temperature. Yeah.
wow. So that goes back to OVW then. I didn't know that. That goes back. So you had that in the back for years before you even brought it out
Yeah.
in TNA. You just couldn't do it in WWE.
Yeah. And if like I tell people now, it's better to ask for forgiveness than it is to ask for permission sometimes.
So if you did that promo, do you think it would have changed a lot of things for you at that time, or you don't think you would have gotten in trouble for it?
I don't think I would have gotten in trouble for it. I think maybe in the moment Vince would have said, you shouldn't have said that. And then I envision that, like, there would have been some fans the next night that would have caught on to it or whatever.
Yeah, because that picked up really well in TNA, like extremely well in TNA. I mean, obviously the marketing you said was different, but I remember, the T-shirts and like the hat. I think you even had a hat with it at one point
Yep,
as well.
I
So,
did. Yeah.
damn man, I didn't know that went back. So that's something crazy. I never knew that went back that far. So I wonder, the thing about WWE is you've heard many people take those type of chances, and it could change their career for all we know. You know what I mean? And looking back, maybe if that had happened, you could have been like, oh, man, then maybe that could have, maybe something different could have happened there. You know what I mean? So I mean, that's always that's just a what if now, but
Yeah.
you do see those type of opportunities, because you said the Austin 316 stuff. That right there, that changed Stone Cold's career forever. When you heard that. John 316. What? Austin 316 signs in the sign. Like, what? Triple H same. I remember he did a promo about the game and stuff like that, and I think he said in an interview, he just randomly said it. I'm the game. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I am the fucking game. He was talking to Jim Ross.
And then the next line on Raw, whatever, the next week on Triple H, the game signs all over. Oh, we got something there with that. I guess I'm the game now. You know what I mean? So marketing is very, like I said, WWE is very good at the marketing. So that's one thing you can never take away from them, is the marketing. The promo packages, the promoting of it. You know what I mean? Sometimes as fans, we've always spoke about it, me and others, but there are many times when we'll go back and we'll watch certain promo packages for certain matches. We won't even watch the match. We'll just watch the promo package because it was so good. You know what I mean? Just take yourself back into that moment. To briefly talk about the Aces and Eights stuff, though, I know we talked about it off the air, but can you tell the people how that kind of came for you to be a part of that?
I think I was injured for a little bit in TNA. I can't remember what had happened. I think it might have been the concussion. I had gotten a pretty severe concussion. I was out for quite a while,
Mm-hmm.
several months, and you know, they were getting ready to. I was getting ready to come back. Didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know what creative had or didn't have. And I remember I got to TV. I think I came a week early just to hang out. And Eric pulled me aside and he was like, "Hey, I got this idea." They had started the Aces and Eights thing already. And he was like, "I'm thinking about throwing you in this group. What do you think?" And I was like me, a fucking biker? Like in my head, I'm thinking,
Yeah.
I'm a biker. And then I thought, you know what? Fuck it. Like, yeah, let's do it. And so then it just
You kind of did fit the image though, because you were the only one. I think you had the biker gloves. You wore the. I mean, obviously everybody had the vest for the Aces and Eights club and everything. But I remember you wore the gloves. I think you might have been the only one to kind of make that stand out. So I mean, it kind of really, if it fit. It's weird how it fit everybody within that aspect. Did you guys feel like maybe there were too many people at times? Or you guys feel like this is perfect, man? Like,
no. I just the only thing that I felt like in a negative way about that group was I feel like there was too much of us all the time. Like as far as like seg one, there would be a regular match, and then there would be one of the guys would come out and interfere. Like West Briscoe would come out and fucking screw somebody over or do something, and then like because when you go to a WWE show, say like right now, Cody Rhodes, right? Cody Rhodes, the hot thing. You hear his music one time, and everybody waits. I remember this was the way back in the day when Austin was the hot shit.
mhm.
You would wait for that glass to break, but you would only hear it one time.
Yeah,
It's like, and
feel it.
could you imagine hearing the glass break during seg one, and then seg three, and then seg five, and seven, and eight, and you know what I mean? It starts to like lose its luster. It's supply and demand.
Yeah.
So that was the only thing that I thought was, negative about that. And the other thing was, I think sometimes things should have taken more time to develop. We had some whenever a new person would come into the group, it was just like, and if you know anything about biker culture, if somebody wants to be a biker, be a part of the gang, you
Yeah.
go through a really, really long process called prospecting. It's like a year long, and they make you swab the toilets and pretty much do
Oh, yeah.
anything, and there could have been some definite entertaining spots. But
What?
it would somebody would come up and we'd hand them a cut.
So this is kind of I might have to ask you about this. This is after TNA and stuff. What what was it like wrestling David Arquette? Because I watched the documentary that he had. He was a wrestling fan, by the way. He's a big wrestling fan, and I watched his documentary. And I didn't know you guys had the match, and they showed it in the documentary. I'm like, is that fucking Mr. Anderson that he's wrestling right now? Like, how did that even come to that? Like, how did that even happen?
So that happened because of Brian Knobs.
Okay.
Brian Knobs ran these shows called Legends of Wrestling, and he would do these deals at like baseball parks around the country. Like he would bring in, they would be stack cards. And I guess one year David Arquette was there. I don't know if he had it. I don't think he was just there like filming or something like that. And then he got in a fight with somebody actually at the bar. And then the next year he reached out to me. Reached out to Brian and asked if he could be a part of it. Said, "I'm filming this documentary where I'm trying to a lot of people think that David Arquette is like the worst thing that's ever happened to pro wrestling, and that he didn't take it seriously." And he was like, "I just want to reverse that. And I want to go get trained properly. And I want to go through and show everybody that I really do love this business." And so Knobs was like, "I'm going to have you work him at the next show. And, he'll beat him in the end. Like he was really adamant, like you're not losing to that guy. Like you're gonna fucking beat him. Um, he's filming the documentary, and so I was obviously like excited about it, and I thought it would be good. I never really knew entirely what the documentary was about. Had I known, I would have definitely had him beat me. Like because
Really?
it just definitely because like the end of the movie, you know, the way that they built it was I was the final boss, right? Like that was his final match, and I beat him. So they didn't have any footage. If you watch that closely, watch the end. It's like the end of that match is not very exciting.
Hmm.
There is no excitement. There is no moment where he like definitively pins me 1, 2, you know, hits his finish 1, 2, 3. And for the documentary purposes, for storytelling purposes, I wish we would have done that. I wish I would have known. But he was awesome to work with. His crew. I
So
remember.
he took that very seriously though. Like everything in him, like he was really serious about like doing this. Like, and that's
Yeah.
one thing about the documentary that was really cool.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
But you were
Yeah.
gonna say another point though before I mentioned
I
that. Go
don't
ahead.
remember. I remember offering to him. I said, like, I run a wrestling school. You're welcome to come, and I'll actually train you. Um, but I think he had a bunch of other projects going on at the same time. He wasn't able to do that. But the match was, it wasn't great, and it was. He's not a wrestler. He's at the end of the day, he's not really trained to be a wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
But he, great guy.
I'm glad he got to. Obviously, people know he won the WCW title and everything, which was not very well received. Like, I mean, it wasn't his fault. You know what I'm saying? Like, he wasn't the
Yeah.
guy in charge, but
Mhm.
he kind of wanted to just kind of, I guess, kind of make a rewrite to that wrong. I mean, he even he got cut in that documentary. He had the match with Nick Gage, and his throat got slit or something like that. So, I mean, he put himself in a lot of positions where he didn't need to. I mean, it really wasn't that serious because it's like, yes, people are gonna forever shit on the WCW effect, but it's like that doesn't really kind of follow him like outside of only in wrestling, but outside of he's a Hollywood star, you know what I mean? So that doesn't really affect his Hollywood stardom, but it really meant something to him because he's such a fan. Like, I don't want that to be my memory, you know what I mean? In
Exactly.
wrestling. So he wanted to, that's I guess that's what makes us wrestling fans like yourself, like so just weird and unique. You know what I mean? Like we look at wrestling in a different aspect than certain other people. You know what I mean? Where it's like, for somebody like David Arquette, like I don't really have to do this to myself, but I want to do this because it means something to me. And there's other people probably in his life probably like, why are you doing this? You know what I mean? Like, what? But to him, it's like this is something. This means something. You know what I mean? Like, you may not understand, but I don't care if you don't understand.
And
This is
again,
for me.
it wasn't his fault in any
Yeah.
way, shape, or form. Like he loved wrestling. He liked wrestling at least, and he got this opportunity because of that movie, Ready to Rumble.
Yes.
And somebody else told him, "Hey, we're gonna put the title on you." Of course, nobody would ever say no to that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something that forever lives the test of time.
Yeah.
And that's a great aspect. Before we head off here, I know you're still doing some bookings and some stuff.
Yeah.
I know you got the match with Zilla Fatu and everything coming up. Um, just basically, I guess what's life been like for you? I guess since you've been out of WWE. I mean, I'm sure you had some ups and downs. You have kids now and everything. You said you stopped watching. Are you back into it now? Do you keep up with it or?
Oh yeah. Like I don't watch religiously, but I make sure that I sort of, you know, I'm watching here and there. Like I got a couple of my students, like Tiffany Stratton is one of my students. So I'm always like, you know,
So
trying to
Tiffany
see.
Stratton, because she's from Minnesota, right? So she
Uh-huh.
was actually in your school. Like you
Yeah. Yep.
helped progress
She,
her.
yep.
She's so good too, man. She's
She's
so good.
crazy good, and she's just getting started. I feel like honestly, watching her, my wife and I talk about this. Like she, barring any crazy unforeseen bullshit, like she will be there to stay for quite a while.
Absolutely, 100%.
She's got it.
Did you know? I
Um,
mean, so you training some people, you know, you could see potential certain people, but for somebody, I don't even think she even grew up a wrestling fan like that. But for
so
somebody who got into it, I mean, did you just see like, nah, this girl is? I mean, she's obviously super athletic, but did she pick it up faster than everybody else? Were you just like, no, this she's different. Like she has something.
like you said, she wasn't a wrestling fan at all. There's her. Um, Greg Gagne was a family friend and knew that she was athletic and beautiful, and said you should try wrestling. I think you'd be good at it. So when she came in, she was good at the physical stuff for sure, but she didn't have like the charisma that you see fucking oozing out of every pore. She
Mm-hmm.
didn't have that at all. She was just a normal, just a really good athlete. And I'd tell her to do something or show her how to do it, and she would get it on the first attempt. And
It's
took,
crazy, man.
took direction really, really well. But like, I've got her first promo on tape. It's not. It's crazy. Like if you watch it, hopefully someday she'll give me the okay to put that out there.
A
But
documentary or something, yeah.
yeah, I figured,
It's not good.
um,
It's not good, huh?
it's not. It Yeah, it really took her, but because of her athletic ability
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that like Greg still has some pull, was able to get her a tryout in WWE, and she blew, you know, as we assumed she would, blew everyone out of the water. And then spent like when she got to OVW, when she got to NXT, she immersed herself in that world and like
Oh yeah, when I think they did
studied.
the breakout tournament when they put her in that tournament, me and others were me and the other people that I'm cool with in group chats, we all were like, oh, it's her.
Yeah.
She's winning. Like it's you just felt it. Like she's she got something different. And that moonsault, that might be the greatest moonsault I think I've ever seen. She hits it every time, like on the marquee. Like you see some people over rotate, some people under rotate, but like she hits it right in the middle, like every time. I'm like, it's got to be
Like,
the greatest moonsault I think I've ever
like
seen.
slow mo, like it's in
Yeah.
slow motion too.
Are there
But
some
yeah,
other people that you trained
yeah,
that maybe you're
some
in
other people.
WWE or other places?
Um, Dante and Darius Martin over in AEW.
Okay.
Those guys are just like, they were crazy good from day one. And Darius is actually really, really good promo. Like, waiting for somebody to put a microphone in front of that guy.
From the beginning?
Oh yeah, he, he was an actor. He did
Oh,
plays in
really?
high school. He took acting classes and stuff like that. So he's really, really good. Dante is like a stupid like athlete. I've never
Oh,
seen
yeah.
anybody as gifted as him. Um, Julia Hart over in AW also.
Sweet,
I've
man. Julie.
also trained Von Wagner. Von
Dude, he
Wagner
was
trained
I
too.
feel like he was a little slept on, man. I feel like at first he ain't had no personality at first. I ain't gonna lie to you. He was a little boring at first. He was
Mhm.
kind of bland. But over time, when they started to give him the table gimmick and he was doing the stuff with Braun Breaker,
Yeah.
that what was it, coming Tuesday when he was saying that line, like
Mhm.
the silly stuff that he would say, he had the promo one time with the sunglasses when he said, hey Dijak, take your sunglasses off, we're inside, like this stupid stuff like that, and it went viral. Like they ended up releasing him, but I was like, he made me a fan. Before he had left, he was somebody that I actually went to like not really caring about at all because I thought he was very boring, to somebody who I was like, I actually like the stuff that he's doing. I honestly really did like the stuff that he did towards it, especially the stuff with Braun Breaker. I really felt like not really sure what his ceiling would have been, but I
Yeah.
feel like he could have did something really beneficial in NXT.
And you know what? He might end up going back. Like he's come back and trained at the academy, and um he's really good. Like, to see the way that he has improved. He's another guy that when he got down to NXT, like lived lived at the performance center and soaked up every ounce of knowledge that he could. Um, no clock punching there. But he
Yeah.
was an athlete. Like he was a Division I college. He played tight end and for like University of Florida, I think.
Hmm.
Um, and just another guy. And then I have a bunch of students who like are I think up and coming. They haven't been discovered yet, but like
Yeah.
they will. Like and it's the craziest part about being a coach is I try not to pre-qualify anybody. I try not to like obviously human nature, you look at something and you go, yay or nay, right? Like,
Hmm.
but I've had people who came in and in my head was like that guy has two left feet. I don't think they're ever gonna get this. To a year later, like I can't believe that person you watch a video from a year earlier. Wow, what a change. And then also, I see people that come in that have the look, have the athletic ability, can talk, and they just, for whatever reason, they don't have enough of a pain tolerance or, just falling down. They
They can't
realize
handle
that falling
it.
down is fucking way harder than you think.
Yeah. Hmm.
And kind of on that topic, you're a wrestling fan, you've been a wrestling fan your whole life, or a very large portion of it.
Yeah.
You see people running the ropes all the time, right? Like you see people hit the ropes or get sent into the ropes or duck this. Or, it's one of the hardest things for people to learn how to do. And you watch it on TV and it's just, you don't even think about it because it's so commonplace. But watching people run those ropes is like watching like Bambi take their first steps on
Hmm.
ice, like in the movie, it's just like
Yeah, I've
really,
heard
really,
many stories about how hard the ropes are, and when you run the ropes, you make sure you put your arm over the rope because if you don't, you're going straight through it. I've seen stories and people will tell stories about that, and I don't think people understand how hard the ropes are because when I see a guy like Braun Breaker, like run as fast as he does hitting the rope, I'm like, holy shit, bro! Like he's running like 23 miles per hour, like hitting the ropes full speed. Like that can go so wrong in so many ways, but he perfects it, you know what I mean? And the more and more
yeah.
you do it, you perfect it.
Speaking of
Um,
a guy as big as Eric Rowan, speaking of big guys like hitting the ropes
mm,
like that, Eric Rowan also has been training at the academy. Like uh, he started training with us like a couple months before the Wyatt Six thing, you know,
mhm. That's
popped
dope,
off.
man.
So
That's great, dude. He's a big individual too.
he is,
I'm
and
sure.
he's really good. And I hope. See, I haven't seen a whole lot of that, but what I hear is good.
Y6, they're doing very good stuff with them. They're not overpresented as they did with Bray Wyatt stuff, where it doesn't feel like it feels special. They actually just brought them back on TV because they're doing this stuff with the Miz, but they got a huge pop when their lights went out and they came in and stuff. I think obviously, with Bray's passing and the tribute stuff, they're always gonna have those type of loyal fans. But um they gotta it honestly surprised me. Like when they came out, the reaction that they got, it really surprised me where it was like as loud as it was. I'm like, oh, they got something really good here. As long as they do it right, because with the Wyatts, for me, it's really not about them winning titles. They just have to tell stories. Just tell good stories with them and don't overpresent their characters because they have the supernatural gimmicks where it's like you make them feel special when they show up and they have purpose of why they're doing what they're doing. So
But
you definitely should
but you
check it
also
out the chance,
you
man.
also have to be careful that it's still got to be believable.
Mhm.
Like it can't go too far off the rails, I guess, because the way that the rest of the show is presented,
Yes.
this is legit competition. You know what I mean? Like
Do you enjoy coaching as much or maybe even more than being in the ring?
I really, really do, and I always wanted to have a wrestling school, like from the early days, but yeah, I really, really enjoy it, man, and seeing those light bulb moments for my students. Um, when I see them, when they take their first booking, and some of them have gone on to do tryouts for for NXT or to get the first dark match or stuff like that. Like I'm excited for them because I remember what that felt like, and I know the emotions that are going through, and I want it to go well for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the thing. Like I wanted to open up a wrestling school so that I had a fucking really awesome run. Like if it ended tomorrow, I was done. I had I did some stuff, I had some great experiences. I want as many people to experience. If you like wrestling, I want to help you have those same experiences.
At this stage in your career, why still do it? Do you still just have the itch, or because I guess you're at a stage in life where maybe you don't really have to, but obviously you still want to. What still drives you to go out there?
Yeah, it's just entertaining. Wanting to contribute. It's art. I'm an artist. It's just yeah, and it's just a way to go out and perform and tell stories. And
How much longer do you think you have?
It's funny because I had that chip on my shoulder when I was in TNA, and I remember somebody interviewing. I had just won the championship, literally the first time that I won the championship in TNA.
Yeah.
Got interviewed, and I was like, somebody asked me that question. I was like, if I'm still doing this in 5 years, somebody fucking shoot me. Like those words actually came out of my mouth because I was just in a different headspace at that time.
Yeah.
And like,
you still
I can't
feel
believe
because right now you're what, late 40s, right?
Yeah, I'm 48.
So you're pushing the 50 mark. So
Yeah. I don't have a whole lot of time left, but I'm in good shape. I don't have any injuries. Like I don't have any really long-term injuries either. Like my
do you
knees
feel
are
great
good.
physically? Like physically, you feel
Yeah.
that's good though, man. That's good. That's good. It's good to hear because you're, like I said earlier, I think it's important to take care of yourself in that aspect because you have kids now. Your kids may have kids someday. So when you get an old man, you don't want to be like, oh man, your grandkids want to play, and you don't want to be like, oh, I can't, because you want to be able to, just live life. You know what I mean? As much as you can. So that's really good to hear that you're in really good physical shape, especially after some of the injuries that you've gone throughout your career and the surgeries and stuff. A lot of people don't sometimes don't recover as well from that. I guess it really just depends on the injuries. I mean, you've had I think shoulder surgeries and stuff like that, and as long as now as you get older, I think technology also advances, and I think a lot of more wrestlers are a lot smarter with that too, knowing like my body has to be the priority. Yes, I'm going to take bumps, and I may not 100% be all the way there, but I can't let myself go down, down the hill.
Yeah. Yeah. Our knowledge of the way the human body works and how to keep it in tip-top performing shape is like,
So you're actually, you're from Green Bay though, right? Correct.
So I'm actually from a town called Two Rivers, which is like 30 miles south of Green Bay.
But Wisconsin is where you grew up, correct?
Yeah.
You've lived in Minnesota for many years.
I have lived in Minnesota since like 2000. When did 2001? 9/11 was in 2001, right?
9/11, that's correct. That's correct.
Yeah, so late 2001 was when I moved over to the Twin Cities, and I've lived it like the entire time that I was at WWE. I've lived here.
So I've never been to Minnesota before. I would definitely like to go there at some point. But
hang on. They say that WrestleMania is supposed to be coming here one of these years, but so maybe you never know.
So I don't know if you keep up and know, but WrestleMania, they gave WrestleMania to Vegas next year.
Yep.
That was supposed to be Minnesota. I think they had a lot because there was videos of like the governor and stuff like that talking about like we got a big announcement coming and stuff like that, but we can't say yet, but something big is coming to town. And then I don't know what happened, but they ended up giving it to Vegas. And what they did was they gave SummerSlam to Minnesota in 2026, but they made it 2 nights. So
yeah,
I probably will end up going to that. I've been to SummerSlam the last couple of years. I've always wanted to go to Minnesota too, just because I've never been. And I was like, I'd like to go to Mall of America. Just never never been to Minnesota. You know what I mean? So I like to go to Minnesota
You
someday.
definitely want to come. You definitely want to come during summer.
Summer's not. Yeah, I'm not going during the winter for sure. That's not happening at all. Wintertime would not be happening. But being from Wisconsin and Minnesota, I mean, are you? I don't know if you're a football guy. Are you a Packers guy or are you a Vikings guy?
I'm a Packers fan. Like,
Okay,
for life.
you're in the same division, the rivals. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
so through because some people switch up, you know, sometimes. So Packers all the way though. I like
But
the
I used to like legit hate the Vikings. Hate them and the Cowboys.
yeah.
And there was a couple of years where I really didn't like the Bears either. But like, now it's just a friendly. I'm actually earlier this season, they were undefeated for a little while, and so I'm happy for them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's become like a friendly rivalry now. I kid most of my students. 99% of my students are all Vikings fans. So
Vikings, guys, yeah.
yeah.
Well, man, I appreciate you for coming on. I mean, we've been on here for almost 2 hours, so I'm sorry to keep you
Yeah,
on.
it was supposed to be 20 minutes.
Yeah,
But
we ran over a
no,
lot of time. So I appreciate you for taking the time and kind of chatting. If you are willing to come back next week, I'll have more people up here, which I'll let them talk and ask their questions they can ask and stuff like that. My co-host and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or big fans of yourself. So if people are watching, we're going to promote this, and Mr. Kennedy will come back and do another episode, which we'll promote and have more time to be able to do stuff. Today's was supposed to be way shorter than what it was, but
no, it's okay.
You got good stories, man. You're a good storyteller. You're not one of the people that you talk to in an interview where it's like you kind of just give one answer. So like, you got stories and things that you can talk about and dive into and everything. So if there's anything that you like to plug in, then I will also share and promote. I know you got some stuff coming up. Like say you got the match coming up with Zilla, who I linked up with him for SummerSlam. So I've been in contact with him and done little stuff with him and stuff like that. So very much looking forward to that show, that match. I would definitely keep an eye out for that. But yeah, if there's anything you'd like to promote, maybe some stuff you got coming up or, just anything you want to talk about.
I just, want to plug my school. If anybody out there is thinking about becoming a professional wrestler, like give me a call. I'll give you my number. My number is 507-722-2776. I don't know if you're able to put that in the description or whatever, but like call me, text me, whatever. Let's talk.
Yeah, I'll definitely put that out there for you. I would definitely like to when I come to Minnesota, I'll have to come to your school, man. I'd like to come and check it out.
Come on down. Yeah, you're welcome anytime.
Yeah, I'll come make some content for you all. Maybe we can do an interview in person. Maybe do some other stuff, some other content with some wrestlers. I don't know about taking no bumps though. I can't promise you that. I can't promise you. I took one bump once. They say wrestlers have always said that, you really don't know if you want to do this until you get in the ring and take your first bump. That's kind of when you got to hit like, this is how it's going to feel. And this is how you'll be doing it. And I got in the ring for the first time in 2020. A buddy of mine has a ring out in Virginia. He's got his own wrestling promotion, stuff like that. So I was like, all right, I'm going to come down and we'll do some stuff and we'll promote it. And, I'll get in the ring and take a bump. I was a little nervous about it, but I took it. And after I took it, I was like, yep. I already knew I didn't want to do it. But after I took the bump, I was for sure like, that just confirmed what I've always known and felt. So
I just like, that was just standing on your feet. I imagine just going straight back, imagine somebody picking you up over their head.
Yeah.
Doing that to you.
Weird. It's such a weird feeling because you got to make sure you tuck your chin and stuff like that. So it's a weird feeling to just fall back and I don't know, man. It was a weird feeling. Like it didn't hurt as much as it didn't really hurt as bad as I anticipated in my mind. I was overthinking it, but I just knew like I don't want to do this like all the time. No, like I'm more of a fan on the out. I know my space. I'm a fan. I like to watch. I like to make content. That's my bread and butter and what I really want to do. So my goal definitely is someday to kind of maybe find a way into doing something creative, maybe on screen manager or something within that aspect. But I definitely would like to come down someday. We could do some stuff, some interviews or whatever, just some type of content, whatever, and we can make something happen. So
I would love that.
Yeah, so appreciate you for coming on, man. Like I apologize for keeping you on this long, so hope you don't mind.
No, it's good. I said that earlier. I'm no heat about it. Like it was supposed to be 15, 20 minutes or whatever, but like, no, it's
Yeah,
good talking to you. So
yeah, I appreciate
appreciate
it,
it.
man. Thank you for coming on. Make sure you guys go check out Mr. Anderson's stuff. Make sure you guys tune in next week for the No Name Wrestling Podcast, 5 p.m. Eastern time, as always, where he comes back and we'll have a little interview. And if you guys maybe in the chat have some questions you want to ask, we'll allow you to ask some questions, and we'll give some time to kind of ask some questions where he can give you some answers that maybe you're curious about. So